Chapter 284. Please conduct yourself with dignity, young miss. Before boarding the treasure-swallowing whale that was headed for Parasol Leaf Continent, Chen Ping'an purposely went to the market next to the incense offering tower. He bought a tube of incense that contained 81 sticks of 3 pure incense, a specialty product of Stalactite Mountain. This incense gave off a refreshing fragrance, and it was a premium product whether one used it to pay respects to deities or to calm one's mind. However, it was quite dear, commanding a price of 1 lesser heat coin per tube, a full 100 snowflake coins. Why had Chen Ping'an spent such an exorbitant amount of money on some incense? This was because he had recalled the mountain god temple in his downtrodden mountain back at home. If friends visited in the future, he could give them these sticks of incense to offer. After all, it would be a beautiful thing if his friends could pay their sincere respects and the mountain god could enjoy premium incense. Apart from this tube of incense from the market next to the incense offering tower, as well as the 2 treasures that he had spent a huge amount of money to purchase from Ganoderma Inn, Chen Ping'an also bought a copy of the Sword Immortal Picture Scrolls, with his set of paintings being composed by a masterful painter from southern Whirl Continent. There were 5 scrolls in total, with each being very large and long. There were 20 sword immortals illustrated on each of the 5 scrolls, and each was only but an inch tall. However, they all appeared extremely lively and ethereal. Of course, the Sword Immortal Picture Scrolls that Chen Ping'an purchased was only a copy. The original picture scrolls were illustrated by a grandmaster painter after he witnessed a battle on the Sword Qi Great Wall. Afterward, countless people created copies of his work. There were far too many sword immortals honored in the Sword Reverence Pagoda. So the Rock Channel copy of the Sword Immortal Picture Scrolls that Chen Ping'an purchased only contained 100 sword immortals chosen according to the whims of the painter. There were several other copies in the store, with the Rock Channel version being the most expensive among the options. After carefully comparing them, Chen Ping'an had discovered that the sword immortals illustrated in the Rock Channel version resonated with him the most. Thus, he had gritted his teeth and bought this version. This had genuinely been a notable expense. The set of picture scrolls had cost him a whopping 50 lesser heat coins. It was unknown whether the beaming shopkeeper was happy about coming across an easily deceived customer or genuinely appreciative of Chen Ping'an's impressive judgment skills. In any case, he told the young boy many interesting and peculiar stories related to the Sword Immortal Picture Scrolls. He said that several sword immortals had coincidentally come across damaged portions of the original paintings in the past, and this had allowed them to comprehend the true intent of the sword immortals illustrated in the paintings. These sword immortals then advanced in leaps and bounds, eventually becoming terrestrial sword immortals who were greatly renowned throughout the world. Chen Ping'an planned to give this set of Sword Immortal Picture Scrolls to Sage Ruan Qiang as a congratulatory present in the future. When Chen Ping'an had left his hometown, Dragon Spring Prefecture, back then, Master Ruan had still yet to carry out his sect-founding ceremony. However, he had most likely carried it out by now. To Ruan Qiang, 50 lesser heat coins was definitely a measly sum that wasn't worth a mention. However, this was at least something purchased from Stalactite Mountain and brought back to the Great Li Empire's Dragon Spring Prefecture. With a distance of thousands of mountains and rivers between the 2 places, it was ultimately the thought that counted rather than the present itself. People say that clothes make the man. As Chen Ping'an walked toward the incense offering dock, several female immortals in their prime surprisingly shot a few glances at him, the type where they came back for seconds and thirds, and not the type where they lost their interest after a single glance. Compared to his trip to Stalactite Mountain to deliver the sword to Ning Yao, Chen Ping'an was more concerned about his imminent trip to Parasol Leaf Continent to search for the old Taoist priest. After confirming that the young female immortals weren't harboring any ill intentions, Chen Ping'an pushed them out of his mind and paid them no more heed. The incense offering dock was larger than the catch and release dock, yet Chen Ping'an didn't see the treasure-swallowing whale that was guaranteed to be colossal in size. Standing there with the boarding jade pendant tied to his waist, Chen Ping'an saw a mountain and sea turtle that had courtyards and pagodas on its back, as well as a gigantic carriage drawn by an azure phoenix and a celestial crane. There was also something that the Mountain and Sea Chronicle described as unique to circling Ascension Continent, a small mountain peak filled with lush green foliage. However, it was unknown whether this mountain was a flying over mountain or flying away peak. It was said that the mountain roots formed by the accumulation of spiritual energy in these mountains were extremely nutritious to flood dragons. When ancient flood dragons entered rivers to transform into dragons in the past, they would pick a suitable river leading to the sea before asking someone to bring flying over mountains and flying away peaks over to toss into the river. This would allow them to replenish their energy in a timely manner and prevent them from becoming exhausted and draining all of their qi and blood. Chen Ping'an had only just started to learn the official dialect of Middle-earth Divine Continent, so he was destined to be unintelligible when he tried to ask for directions. If others couldn't understand him, he would have no option but to take out a bamboo slip and carve out his questions. Fortunately, Chen Ping'an found a few passengers who had jade pendants of the same style hanging by their waist. Thus, he silently followed them for a while, and it wasn't long before they arrived at some place that was bustling with people. Chen Ping'an breathed a sigh of relief. However, someone suddenly tapped his left shoulder lightly, yet Chen Ping'an directly turned his head toward the right, only to see a familiar face. Seeing that Chen Ping'an didn't fall for their trick, the person lost interest and said in a lazy voice, "What, are you also heading to Planchette Writing Sect in Parasol Leaf Continent? Is this a huge coincidence? You're not coveting something of mine, are you? Perhaps you're coveting my beauty." The guilty person is making accusations first. Chen Ping'an had a neutral impression of this person. It was someone with a pearl hairpin, a pink dress, and a colorful ribbon around the waist. A very beautiful, young man. If their encounter on Osmanthus Island, traveling from Old Dragon City to Stalactite Mountain, could be put down to fate, then it was incredibly likely that ulterior motives existed now that they were on the same intercontinental ship from Stalactite Mountain to Planchette Writing Sect. The young man with the surname Liu, someone who was previously beaten out of the incense offering tower by the young Taoist priest guarding the door, clearly noticed the alertness in Chen Ping'an's eyes. He patted his boarding jade pendant for the treasure-swallowing whale and chuckled. "Just as you suspect, I am going to Planchette Writing Sect after I waited for someone for a long time. Indeed, I've been waiting for you." What kind of admission is this? Chen Ping'an was slightly perplexed, yet he decided that he would definitely keep a respectful distance from this person. Not only was this young man as beautiful as a woman, but his voice was also crisp and pleasant to the ear. It was extremely difficult to discern whether he was male or female. When they had, coincidentally, visited the Catch and Release Pavilion together before, this person's speech and actions had reflected his personality as a lively and unconventional person. Even though Chen Ping'an had nothing against this person's strange attire, curious personality, and peculiar hobbies, he still wished that this person wouldn't introduce disturbances to his very ordinary and peaceful life. The young man clasped his hands behind his back, interweaving his fingers and tilting his chin slightly upward as squinted his eyes and gazed at Chen Ping'an in a gentle and feminine manner. He appeared even more delicate than a woman as he said in a gentle voice, "I've already told you the truth, regardless of whether you believe me or not. As for me, my name is Liu Tai, Liu as in land and Tai as in platform 1. I'm a descendant of Middle-earth Divine Continent's Liu clan, but I'm not especially liked by the members of my clan. Because of this, I ran away to travel around the world by myself. I've traveled to 5 of the 9 continents in Majestic World, and I initially didn't plan to go to the Parasol Leaf Continent. However, I'm quite strapped for money at the moment, so I wanted to look for a good person whom I could get free food and free shelter from, yet wouldn't covet my beauty. I feel like that person is you. In any case, I already owe you a grain rain coin, so I don't mind owing you another one. By the time we arrive at Parasol Leaf Continent, I might have already encountered some huge fortune and repaid this debt. At the same time, I might have also made enough money to return home." From Chen Ping'an's expressionless face, It was clear that the young boy was completely unwilling to believe his interlocutor's explanation. Lu Tai sighed and said, "All right, I'll tell you the truth. I'm from the school of naturalists and I'm skilled at divination and fortune-telling. However, I'm genuinely strapped for money, although it's a lie that I can't make any money. Even so, I already owe you a grain rain coin, and I also performed a divination for myself not long ago. The outcome was this: travel east on the treasure swallower, noble in parasol leaf continent, upper fortune. This result is very simple to understand. However, in order to guard against any accidents, I still stayed here for 20 entire days. This is why I said that I was waiting for someone. In the end, I came to a realization when I saw you arrive. My old ancestor is guiding and guarding me on this trip to Parasol Leaf Continent, and I'll suffer retribution from the heavens if I dare to not go." Chen Ping'an didn't hurl insults, nor did he show any signs of impatience. Instead, he seemed amiable and open to discussion as he asked, "Young Master Lu, I naturally won't stop you if you're traveling to Parasol Leaf Continent based on your upper fortune. It's not like I can stop you either. However, can the two of us each go our own ways? If you are in dire need of money, I'm happy to lend you some more lesser heat coins." Lu Tai suddenly cut Chen Ping'an off and said in an innately seductive voice, "What do you mean, young Master Lu? To avoid some complications and issues, you can just refer to me as Miss Lu. Otherwise, people will look at me in very strange ways." Chen Ping'an could feel his head becoming slightly numb. If you're worried about other people looking at you in strange ways and judging you, then why aren't you worried about me looking at you in strange ways and judging you? Lu Tai surprisingly started to pout and act cute, saying, "Pretty please, Chen Ping'an, can you please bring me along with you? I can swear to the heavens that I don't harbor any ill intentions toward you. Otherwise, I'll be punished by the heavens, and I'll be thrown into a lake of lightning. I'll also be suppressed under Tassel Mountain, and I'll be imprisoned in the furnace in the Dragon Palace deep under the sea. I'll be exiled to some desolate mystical realm where there exists no person for tens of thousands of kilometers." As Lu Tai uttered this nonsense, he even extended a hand that was even paler and more slender than that of a woman and tried to grab Chen Ping'an's arm. Chen Ping'an got goosebumps all over his body, and he no longer cared about whether he was polite as he slapped Lu Tai's hand away and said in a righteous and strict manner, "Young M. Miss Lu, please conduct yourself with dignity." Lu Tai huffed and retracted his hand. Standing still, he bit his lips with a sulky look in his eyes. He looked to be on the verge of tears. Chen Ping'an turned around and left. However, Lu Tai followed him like a shadow, stopping when Chen Ping'an stopped and turning his head when Chen Ping'an turned his head. At some point in time, he even retrieved a small and exquisite copper mirror from some unknown place. There was also a small container of makeup powder between his fingers. It was as if he were a beautiful woman applying makeup in her room. Even though Chen Ping'an was already relatively familiar with Lu Tai, he was still completely terrified by this image. His hairs stood on end. However, many male cultivators in the surroundings had a longing look in their eyes. In fact, some elderly and experienced cultivators at the Golden Courtier and Nascent Tier had fervent expressions in their eyes, even though they saw through Lu Tai's disguise and knew that he was a man. On the path of cultivation, and throughout their long lives, there would eventually come a time when nothing was taboo. Lu Tai was like a pitiful young wife who had been abandoned. He didn't dare to complain to the heartless man, and he only dared to silently follow him from a distance, reluctant to leave. People in the surroundings looked at them with amused expressions. Chen Ping'an had never experienced this kind of repulsive approach before. He was filled with anger, yet he didn't know how to deal with Lu Tai. People continued to vanish near the front of the ferry station, and only then did Chen Ping'an discover the boarding location for the treasure-swallowing whale. These were lengths of embroidery draped over the ground. When Chen Ping'an had purchased his boarding jade pendant back then, there had been 3 different options on offer: Cloud on Peak, Enchanting Garden, and Emerald Lake. Chen Ping'an had gone with Emerald Lake, the medium-priced option. Looking at the 3 lengths of embroidery on the ground, Chen Ping'an saw that the scenery on each was distant. There was one with flowing mists and clouds, amid which a lone mountain peak towered through. There was an emerald lake atop which residences lay like the starry sky, and there was a collection of courtyards and pagodas filled with colorful flowers in full bloom. Not far behind him, Miss Lu explained in a timid voice, "It's not like people can board the treasure-swallowing whale from its mouth. This treasure-swallowing whale is very large, and it can be regarded as the largest one in Golden Armor Continent. There are 4 separate mystical realms inside this treasure-swallowing whale, with 3 of them transformed into residential areas for passengers. In comparison, there's only a single mystical realm inside the treasure-swallowing whale from Old Dragon City. It's far inferior to this one. As for the 3 lengths of embroidery, these are actually extremely high-grade land-shortening talismans that can help passengers immediately travel to their relevant mystical realm." A look of realization spread across Chen Ping'an's face. The all-encompassing Divine Book Mountain and Sea Chronicle had detailed records regarding mystical realms. Because this pertained to blessed lands, and since it was strongly related to Jewel's small world as well, Chen Ping'an had been especially attentive when reading the relevant sections. In fact, he had especially looked for the young inn manager of Stork Inn and asked him about some things that weren't recorded in the book. Those who were born and raised in Stalactite Mountain were often very knowledgeable and spoke in a very confident manner regardless of their cultivation base and family situation. They talked about everything without fear, from sages to heavenly lords to earth immortals. In any case, the range and depth of their knowledge and experiences were indeed superior to any place outside Stalactite Mountain. The young inn manager was a taciturn person, yet he had chatted freely with Chen Ping'an in a rare display. He had most likely treated Chen Ping'an as an esteemed guest. Many blessed lands that naturally aged and crumbled or were destroyed by external factors would leave behind pieces of territory after they shattered. However, the locations of these territories were unknown, and thus they were aptly referred to as mystical realms. For instance, the wine shop that sold Forgetting Sarah wine in Stalactite Mountain was the sole remaining mystical realm of Golden Millet Blessed Land. Oftentimes, the fated opportunities of cultivators would be intricately tied to mystical realms. Mystical realms could add icing to the cake, and they could also deliver help in times of great need. It could be said that the existence of mystical realms, both large and small, instilled Qi refiners with a sense of ambition and yearning. Indeed, the large majority of vagrant cultivators and itinerant cultivators who managed to rise and achieve fame could attribute their success to fated opportunities obtained from mystical realms. It was possible for cultivators to inadvertently wander into unoccupied mystical realms by chance. These mystical realms might be paradises filled with the essence of plants and life, or they might be vast expanses of desolate land filled with a miasma of poison. They might also be cave abodes left behind by sages after they passed away. If one were fortunate, they could obtain rare fated opportunities and ascend to the heavens in a single step. If one were unfortunate, however, then they might perhaps become trapped in the mystical realm forever, eventually dying of old age. Or perhaps they might face some perilous danger and be killed. In the end, their belongings would become nothing more than fated opportunities for those who stumbled upon the mystical realm in the future. Chen Ping'an was very keen to know whether Jewel's small world left any mystical realms in the world after crumbling and plummeting to the ground. He could ask Wei Bo when he returned home in the future. With these thoughts in mind, Chen Ping'an walked toward the length of embroidery that led toward the emerald lake inside the treasure-swallowing whale. Lu Tai sighed in grief and quickened his pace, calmly walking over and blocking Chen Ping'an's path. He extended a hand and said, "I initially planned to go to the emerald lake as well. However, since you loathe me so much, I won't be a thorn in your side anymore. I can change my residence, and I can pay some more money and ask someone to move me to that prestigious enchanting garden instead. Let's part ways here. Chen Ping'an, you said you would lend me some lesser heat coins before. Does this offer still stand? Otherwise, I won't be able to move to the enchanting garden." Lu Tai was pouting and pitiful, and his appearance appeared strange no matter how Chen Ping'an looked at him. Chen Ping'an directly retrieved a handful of lesser heat coins, happy to lose money to avoid calamity. He walked over and hurriedly handed the money to Lu Tai. Chen Ping'an was willing to spend this money as long as this person didn't disturb him anymore. He wanted to peacefully practice his fist techniques and sword techniques on the intercontinental ship. After accepting the lesser heat coins, there was a deep sense of grievance in Lu Tai's watery eyes as he dazedly stared at Chen Ping'an. In the end, he silently turned around and left, most likely looking for someone to help change his residence. When Chen Ping'an walked onto the strange land-shortening talisman, he saw a delighted Lu Tai winking at him from a distance. The feminine man raised his hand and waved the jade pendant that had the characters Emerald Lake engraved on it. As it turned out, Lu Tai was genuinely strapped for money. As a result, he had only been able to purchase a boarding jade pendant for the cheapest, Cloud on Peak, mystical realm in the beginning. Afterward, however, his colorful lies had convinced Chen Ping'an to give him a handful of lesser heat coins. Lu Tai's footsteps were light and nimble as he walked toward the length of embroidered brocade rug that Chen Ping'an was on in a lively and mischievous manner. His expression was smug, and he appeared even more beautiful and charming than before. Before vanishing from the ferry station, Chen Ping'an couldn't help but curse that young lady in his mind, exclaiming, "Fucking hell." 1. Lu Tai's name is written Lu Tai.